humanity sets the agenda.
Education rights are contained in Section 29 of the South African Constitution. In terms of Section 29, everyone has the right to a basic education and to further education, which the state, through reasonable measures, must make progressively available and accessible. These rights place a duty on the state to respect an individual's right to education. Lawyers for Human Rights has once again stressed that no child may be prevented from attending school simply because they do not have birth certificates, IDs, permits, or passports. To tell us more, we have the attorney at the Center for Child Law, Stanley Malematja. Stanley, good morning and thank you for joining me.
Good morning, and thank you for having me, and good morning to the viewers and the listeners.
All right. So the Constitution, Section 29, mentions the rights to education for every child. Does this include undocumented kids?
Absolutely. So the important wording, if I can put it that way, in Section 29, subsection 1, paragraph A of our Constitution, is the word everyone. And the Constitutional Court, in the case of Juma Masjid, actually unpacked what does the word everyone mean. And the court said that the word everyone means every person within the borders of the Republic. So it doesn't matter whether it's a child with disabilities or an undocumented child. The Constitution says everyone within the borders of the Republic has the right to basic education.
Mm-hmm. Now, how does the lack of documentation impact on a child's rights to education as per the Constitution?
I mean, it impacts heavily because you'd remember that the right to basic education is actually a gateway right which enables an individual to exercise or have access to other fundamental human rights. So the moment when a person is denied access to education, you are actually denying that person an opportunity to be an effective participating member of society. So we've taken the Department of Education to court or on a number of cases. Even in the case of, the case of Home Affairs, because you remember that the issue of birth registration is an issue that stems from Home Affairs as the department that is responsible for issuing birth certificates. So in the case of Home Affairs versus Wachinuka, it was actually found that undocumented persons in South Africa do qualify for human rights and are entitled to human rights. So the lack of documentation does not mean that one is not entitled to fundamental human rights.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now some schools have been rejecting applications from undocumented kids. We've seen this last year. We've seen this the year before in 2019. And you guys got involved. The Center for Child Law got involved. Now, after the court ruled that children should go to school with or without documents, can schools still reject the kids? Is this only private schools are allowed to reject, or should private schools also allow undocumented kids?
No, so yeah, and thank you for raising that. So in 2020, the Center for Child Law got a judgment against the Minister of Basic Education. So the name of the case is Center for Child Law versus Minister of Basic Education, and it was a case in the Eastern Cape. And the court ordered that the Minister of Basic Education must admit all learners who are in possession of birth certificates, even those who are not in possession of birth certificates. So the court actually gave a clear directive there that lack of a birth certificate does not mean that a person is not entitled to the right to basic education. And following that case, following that judgment, the Minister of Basic Education actually released and promulgated a circular. And in that circular, the Minister of Basic Education gave instruction to all public schools in the country to admit children without birth certificates. And where a child does not have a birth certificate, the secular states clearly that the parent must actually give a sworn statement identifying the child. And that sworn statement and the information that is included there is the information that is going to be used by schools to register the child and enroll the child at school. Then after that, the parent then has a responsibility to approach the Department of Home Affairs and try to have their child's birth registered. The principals of schools also have a duty stemming from the secular to try and assist parents by bringing the matter before the Department of Basic Education. Then the department should actually liaise with the Department of Home Affairs and say, we have so and so number of children who are enrolled in our school, and these children do not have birth certificates. Can the Department of Home Affairs step in and assist these children?
Well, we already know the situation at the Department of Home Affairs and the backlogs that they have. So this doesn't seem like it's going to be something that will be resolved anytime soon. But the online process also requires one to add in certain information about the child, for example, birth certificate. So how can we work our way around that, especially with undocumented kids? Because you will need to upload the birth certificate, etc. And if you do not have one, you cannot proceed. Did you get the question, Stanley? Stanley, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still with you. I lost you there for a moment, but I got your line of questioning. You see, the
Right.
unfortunate part is that when we develop technologically, it is unfortunate that a number of people, a great number of people, are left behind because of the development in technology. Now, the moment this online system requires one to upload a birth certificate before one can even be admitted into a school or enrolled into a school. Now, it poses a challenge because it now when you're on an online system, you are dealing with a robot, and the robot does not reason. When the robot says upload a birth certificate before I can find a school for you and ensure that you are enrolled, if you don't have that birth certificate, then automatically the system kicks you out. But there's also an option. The Department of Education actually does make room for those who do not have birth certificates to actually approach relevant district departments of education to explain their situation, that they are not in possession of a birth certificate and therefore they are unable to make an online application for the enrollment of their children. So the online system is not like it's not like the pinnacle that if you cannot access that system, then it means that your child cannot be enrolled. You can even walk into a school. You can walk into a school that is near your house and approach the principal and explain your situation, and your child will be enrolled. Because there's actually a circular by the Department of Education itself to say that no undocumented child should be denied access to education. So the Department of Education is aware of the situation. They are aware of all the problems that we are facing in the country, the backlogs at the Department of Home Affairs, and other challenging issues. And we should also be cognizant of the fact that the issue of undocumented children is not an issue that is exclusive to foreign nationals. It is also a problem with South African nationals whose births are not registered, because back then would remember that the law did not allow an unmarried father to actually register the birth of their children. So you find a situation where the biological mother of the child has abandoned the child, or is nowhere to be found, or is unfortunately passed away. Then the child is left with an unmarried father. The law back then did not allow an unmarried father to register the birth of his child. So now it poses a very, very big problem, both for the South African nationals' children and also for the foreign national children. So it's not a situation unique to foreign nationals.
Mm-hmm. Right now, how many applications does the center receive, and how are you responding to the call for education?
Yeah, so now we do receive quite a number of queries regarding access to basic education for undocumented children. So how we respond we start by drafting a letter first to the particular school where the child made an application and was denied enrollment because the child is not in possession of a birth certificate. So we write a letter to the school and we remind the school about its own circular, about its own department circular, that listen, your Department of Education says that you are not allowed under any grounds to deny a child access to basic education merely because the child is undocumented. So we remind them first of the law, we remind them of the constitution, we remind them of case law, then we remind them of their circular. Where they fail to respond, then we copy in the department and the relevant district. And then at times it does, but fortunately enough, at this stage, we haven't reached a point where we need to relitigate the right to basic education for undocumented children.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Stanley, and for helping us unpack that issue that we're currently facing as a country. Undocumented children should have access to their basic right, which is education. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful day.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Attorney at the Center for Child Law, Stanley Malematja, talking about the challenges that undocumented children have in accessing their right to education. And there was an article that was published by IOL report, and it says lawyers for human rights has once again stressed that no child may be prevented from attending school simply because they do not have birth certificates, IDs, permits, or passports. Tandeka Chauke, a lawyer at the organization, said that under the constitution, every child in South Africa had the right to go to school irrespective of whether they had documentation. So if you feel like you have nowhere to go, just try taking your child to school and make sure that you have some documents in place, like perhaps your own documents, but make sure that the child has access to an education as it is their basic right. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media. We will be right back after the break.